Welcome.
Hello again.
Episode 18.
This is getting so boring.
3 away.
Hey,
I wonder what percentage we are now. Because if in 3 episodes we're going to be in the top 1% of podcasts. If you get to episode 18, like there must be like a reducing percentage every episode you film.
I failed GCSE's maths hard, so this is not a question for me.
No.
You're probably a lot more intellectual than I
doubt it.
when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I'm a jiu-jitsu coach. Yeah. Well, probably at least top 5.
Yeah.
Top 5%.
Are we still going for like leopard skin for the 21?
I can do the whole. I can do the trio.
Yeah.
Shorts, jacket, and Crocs.
Still going to be fairly cold. You could do Superman style shorts.
That'll
over
be
the.
Fine. I'll gut it out.
Just got it out.
I'm tough.
Cool. I don't know what I'm going to wear, but whatever I wear, it's going to be completely overshadowed by your amazing costume.
No. unless you go for like a zebra skin or something.
Okay, go full African animal.
You could dress up. I mean, this would be if people have watched the podcast. You could dress up as a monkey.
Yeah. Well,
and you could see if I can guess what.
Oh, now we're talking.
Which one you've dressed up as, monkey or ape?
Yeah, and you're not allowed to look at previous podcasts between now and then to research it.
I think I've got it now. A monkey has a tail.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have a tail, it's big, it's an ape. I'm going to go with that criteria.
Yeah, there are. I think. I mean, I don't know. There could be elements that I'm missing. I don't know whether that's. I think that's a hard and fast rule. The tail thing. But apes. I mean, there are. I don't know whether all apes are big, like bonobo apes. Are you checking the thing already?
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
So I think it's because I got a new phone. I'm a bit anxious.
Okay.
It's okay.
We need a phone call from my dad now. We got all the food groups covered. Because bonobo apes, I don't think they're big, but they're apes. But
the only bonobo I know is like a musician from Brighton.
Okay, is he an ape?
Probably not.
Okay, he might have borrowed that word. Maybe.
I'd imagine so.
Yeah. There's probably an outside chance. Yeah. All right. So we'll do monkey costume of some sort or ape costume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you going to blackface?
No.
That's pretty. That's edgy.
Pretty risky.
That one might get shadow banned.
No, this again. There's an outside chance we might get. That might be the tipping point. Talking about midgets is one thing, but blackface. I saw something on Facebook, I think the other day, about like it was a certain scene from Little Britain, and it's been mentioned quite a few times. Little Britain, about how risque some of the scenes.
Little Britain was edgy.
Well, edgy,
and it wasn't 90. Little Britain.
No, it was noughties.
Yeah, it was noughties.
Yeah. I know they were obviously doing it in the best way, if you know what I mean. They weren't like taking the mick out of minorities, but they were blacking up, and it's just There was a picture of Matt Lucas as an African woman, full on. Oh, it's just like, fuck me, you couldn't make that these days.
That was probably one of the last like properly edgy shows. Like I think, and it's not edgy, but like In-Betweeners had some edginess to it, but it wasn't like Harry Enfield and Chums or like The Fast Show or
no, totally.
Like how when you watch Harry Enfield and Chums now, it seems racist.
Yeah,
but like. Obviously, it's comedy, and like comedy should be, you should be free to express yourself in kind of any way because you're making jokes. Yeah. Like, so that's kind of the point, that it's a joke. You don't actually think that. Yeah. I mean, I guess you can have racist jokes that you are making a joke at someone else's, which is...
I think that's the
it's difficult.
It is difficult.
I don't quite know where you stray into inappropriate or not.
Well, there's like the Bernard Manning style of like old school 70s, like full on racism. Like they're taking the mick out of minorities, so they are the butt of the joke.
I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah.
But like, do you remember like a really old program called Alf Garner? What was it called? Oh, it's like, and it was basically the main guy in the show was Till Death Do Us Part was the program, right? And it was a bald fella, like old Cockney fella. And he was the main character, but he was the butt of all the jokes. But he was just like an overt racist, right? And the actor once said that he was stopped in the street, and the guy was like, "Oh, I love it when you take the mick out of them," sort of thing. And he was like, "I'm not taking the mick out of them. I'm taking the mick out of people like you."
Yeah.
Because he's the butt of the joke.
You're missing the point.
Yeah. But it's just especially these days, it's be a dodgy thing to get involved in making jokes of any kind like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you can't really do it anymore. There's so much fragility around, like whether you're racist or bigot and things like that. It's like you just can't say it. Like, you just can't say things.
Yeah,
like which people shouldn't be making racist and bigoted jokes.
No.
Like, and shouldn't be abusing people for whatever it is. But like, I think it's gone too far that you can't even like, I don't know, say certain things, and it's like you're not even saying it in like a derogatory way. You're just talking about something. Yeah,
this is the thing. This is, I think, one of the negative things about comedy today. Like, I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy. I love watching it because it makes me laugh. But I'm really into the art of it as well. It's really, I love a really good stand-up comic for me is someone who can kind of, you forget you're watching stand-up comedy. You just listen to someone talk. Whereas when you're really aware you're watching stand-up comedy, it stops being funny almost because you just know, oh, this is a show. But I like Ricky Gervais's take on it when he's like, I'm making these risque jokes and we're laughing because we know what the right thing is and we know that I'm saying the wrong thing. So we're laughing together.
It's almost ironic.
Yeah, we're laughing together at how ridiculous the wrong thing that I just said was. I don't mean these things. And we live in a time now where most comics have to have some sort of a disclaimer in their set to say, look, these are only jokes, people. Don't try and get me cancelled. Don't put me all over Twitter. Don't take these things out of context. I don't mean these things. I'm just trying to make you laugh.
Yeah.
Do you know? I think
the context should be you're at a comedy show.
Yeah. I don't mean these things. I'm literally just making jokes. Jimmy Carr being a prime example. I'm sure.
God, he is
through the bone.
Yeah. He went so hard at someone in the first half that when he went to check back in on them in the second half, they're gone.
But it's he's doing it because that's his thing. You listen to him interviewed. He's a really sensitive, intelligent guy. He's just, that's his shtick.
Yeah.
And
people want it.
Yeah,
they want to be shocked.
And people that go to his shows and they're shocked and they start putting things on that. It's like, you were at a Jimmy Carr fucking comedy show. What did you expect?
Yeah, you should have looked him up before you went.
Yeah.
Right.
I love the fact that we're not even at episode 21 and we are morphing into a sort of pseudo Joe Rogan political podcast. This is episode 2. We've just gone in on something. This is, and then we start to talk about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the niche. We just have a little sort of bit at the top.
A rant.
Where and then
we're not right wing like Joe Rogan, so
not yet.
I think we probably tread down the centre.
I like to think I'm centred, left leaning, something.
Yeah, like ideally I'd like to be left leaning because I think like a sort of idealistic, sort of inclusive world is better.
Yeah, I agree.
I think maybe the incarnation of the left at the moment doesn't quite subscribe to that.
No.
But what we had like maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago was probably the right thing to do. I think that's just my opinion. Some people are going to disagree with that.
Totally.
Which is fine.
And I think for the first time ever, we have an extreme left.
Yeah, well, it's happened before, isn't it? Was it Mussolini left?
Oh, was he? I didn't know that.
I'm not great on my history, but I'm sure there was one. No. Like China, that's extreme left, isn't it? Communism's extreme left.
I guess, yeah. I guess, this incarnation of the extreme left of
in the Western world.
Yeah. And the way that it's all going is, it's all very crazy at the moment, isn't
Everything's extreme, though, isn't it?
It is these days, yeah.
Except for the weather in England. That's not extreme.
The only thing that is constant about the weather in England is change.
We're probably quite lucky, really. We're in the centre, so we're like, it's pretty like, it's up and down, but like places like Ireland and Cornwall and places like that, like they're literally start the day and it's lovely and finish the day with like a hurricane.
Yeah, do you know Brian said that in this? Brian, shout out to Brian, who's Northern Irish. Brian, and he said you're almost spoilt in this country because you get a bit of sunshine and it rains sometimes. He said it always rains over in Ireland because you just got
potatoes are so good.
You see, but you just got the Atlantic. You got nothing protecting you. It's just constant, just. It's like that. Yeah. At least we get a little bit of sunshine.
Jiu-jitsu.
Well, yeah.
We've got a few talking points today.
Yeah, where were the ones you said? So
there's been a few things that on other popular jiu-jitsu podcasts I've been a little bit irked by. So I thought we'd discuss them without naming names. I thought we'd discuss the perspective of other people's opinions.
Was that a play on words?
About jiu-jitsu.
So do you want to start at the top?
I don't know. I can't remember what I put at the top. What did it say?
Number 1 was using heart rate zones.
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
Number 2.
Number 2. State of wrestling in Europe versus the USA.
this was what kind of irked me the other day when I was listening to a podcast, and it was the host of the podcast referring to sort of UK wrestling and I think European wrestling as shocking.
Right.
And I thought, I think that's probably a bit harsh. Now, I'm not trying to make the claim that the UK is as good as the USA at wrestling. Like, no, I'm not going to make that claim. Obviously, that's crazy. In the US, they've had a long history of wrestling in all areas of education, and they're one of the leaders. Like, if you look up, I did a bit of googling earlier, and if you look up like the most Olympic medals, I think they've got the most total Olympic medals in wrestling.
Right.
The former USSR, like the Soviet Union, like. It's difficult because obviously it used to be the Soviet Union, which is now broken down into like X amount of countries, probably like 10 or so countries. But Russia, let's say, plus the Soviet Union pre-1994 or whatever it was, have got the most golds. And they're like, 10 medals away from being the most. So it's Russia and like America are the highest ranking. But then you have like a spattering of other countries, like in and around the sort of like Cuba are in there, but Japan are in there as well. And lately, the Japan wrestling like program's been like excellent, so they've really bumped it up like over the last few Olympics. But you've got like Turkey, Bulgaria, Azerbaijan, I think it was, all the Bajans, those sort of ones, and the stands and places like that, which are sort of the old Russian sort of republics, I think. Hungary were in there. But there were various countries that like basically are in Europe. They're sort of more towards the Eastern Europe, but they're in Europe. Yeah. Ukraine was in there.
Poland.
I didn't see Poland mentioned, but I'm sure they've got good wrestling there. But it's much more commonplace throughout those kind of Eastern European, focus on the European word, places in Europe. Wrestling's much more of a big deal in those countries, and they've got excellent wrestlers who are winning medals, and have been for years at the highest level, World Championships, Olympics, things like that. And I guess because of immigration, you do have a lot of very good wrestlers from those countries in the UK. Yeah. And they're running wrestling programs. It might be at jiu-jitsu gyms. It might be, in MMA gyms, things like that. There's a bunch of like really high level, good wrestlers who've been here for quite a while. And that has been seeping in. And I think if you go around like, MMA, well-established MMA gyms in the UK and said, oh, what do you think of, UK wrestling? People would be like, it's pretty good, and I'm not saying again we're going to be out there sort of winning Olympic medals, but it's not shocking by any means. There's some good guys at the highest level. Like look at Owen Livesey, he's plying his trade at the highest level, and he's gone up against some good wrestlers. Like who was the chap he went up against on Polaris? It was broke his leg against Anderson Silva, or broke Anderson Silva's leg, can't remember. Chris Weidman, yes. I believe he's a D1 wrestler.
Is he? He broke his leg as well, didn't he?
Yeah, I can't remember who broke the leg, but
he broke his leg the first time.
Both of them, I think, have broken their legs.
Yeah. I think it was
a weird fact that Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman have both had the same leg break, and it happened in their match, but then the other one broke their leg in a separate match. Anyway, getting away from the point.
Yeah.
Livesey basically kind of out wrestled the guy, and the guy's like a high level D1 wrestler, and when you talk about wrestling, like that sort of term D1 gets thrown around as like the sort of
the gold standard.
Yeah, the gold standard, and that doesn't mean you're an Olympic medal winner, but it means you're elite. Yeah, you're very good at wrestling.
Yeah.
So clearly we do have some guys in the UK from the UK who would be equivalent D1 wrestlers. And I'm sure there are plenty of guys from Europe in the UK at the moment coaching wrestling. Look at Silviu up in Los Banditos. You got Lumbo. I can't remember his full name. He's knocking around on the south coast. I think he might be Bulgarian, but I'm not entirely sure. There's a bunch of guys. And there are. If you look in the north of England, the catch wrestling like lineage, that is a heavy focus on stand-up and wrestling techniques, and taking people to the ground. I'm sure there are some absolute savages up there. So just to sort of brush, the UK's wrestling, is shocking. I think that's not accurate. It's not accurate.
Harsh. Like, was this guy American?
No. He's from
a British
the UK.
Guy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was just like, mate, what are you talking about?
Interesting.
Like, for me, that reflected maybe their club doesn't focus that much on stand-up. So maybe they're sort of like, oh, the stand-up's not very good. But like, you know, I know our club focuses a lot on stand-up, and we have got people who are good wrestlers. Again, you know, maybe they're not D1 wrestlers, but they love wrestling and they focus on it, and they're developing that aspect of and they always have been. Like, our head coach Colin has competed in wrestling a bunch of times and trains with Neil, who's a very good wrestler. That's his main discipline, really, is wrestling. Like, he's been doing it for years, decades probably. And we got a lot of high-level judokas at our club who've competed, you know, nationally and internationally for Team GB, and they are very good wrestlers as well. I think, you know, judo has been well established in the UK for a long, long time. Probably, well, longer than jiu-jitsu, really.
A lot longer, really, yeah.
A lot longer. Yeah. And we've had some good judokas who've performed very well on the international stage. And I think if you've got, if you're a high-level judoka, you know, if you're at that, like, potentially competing for your country level, and then you start to transition into wrestling, you're probably going to pick it up quite well, I imagine. Like, that's what I've observed anyway. Like, people who are good at judo, they start wrestling and they're picking it up pretty quick.
Oh man, there's got to be
Charlie, you know.
There's got to be exactly. There's got to be so many principles. There are so many principles that just transfer.
Just good base, like Kazushi, off balancing people,
good grips,
like, you know, grip fighting.
Mate, totally.
I know it's different, like, but like.
Yeah, but you still use things like collar ties and stuff in judo, right? You know, it's so definitely.
I think it brings up an interesting question. What I thought, because I initially thought, well, I think that's a bit of a sweeping statement to say that UK wrestling's shocking. I don't think it is. I think it's getting better all the time. And there's a lot of very talented people over here who are dedicating a lot of time to it. Yeah. You know, especially within the jiu-jitsu scene, because wrestling is becoming more and more of the meta. Yeah. You see, there's some really good guys coming out of, you know, certain gyms.
Definitely.
But it sort of made me think about like it's interesting to look at like the world map and think, you know, people from different areas, like, are there specialists, and does that have a geographical like influence? Like, are you getting really all the Japanese guys, are they like really good leg lockers, or like you know, like that kind of thing? Like, I guess you could broadly say like American jiu-jitsu people, a lot of the time they are quite good wrestlers.
Yep.
I would say probably like if you look at Brazil, I'm sure that like, well, there are loads of good wrestlers that coming out of Brazil, but there's a lot of really good guard players. You know, it's interesting. I think the UK at the moment, we've got some of the most elite guard players, like leg lockers.
Yep. Owen.
You know, you look at Owen, both the Owens, Owen Jones, Owen Flanagan, Taylor Pearman, again, like just ran through trials, all leg locks, wins, I believe it was. So there's some really like elite leg lockers, and you know, you're hearing people from the top teams referring to them as some of the best leg lockers in the world, so it's obviously well thought of. Australia, there's loads of good grapplers coming out of Australia.
Australia's like blowing up.
Yeah, really is. And they seem to have a lot of good leg lockers.
Yeah,
Craig James,
man, totally.
Lachlan Giles.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just we've said this a million times, but it's just testament to how much it's all exploding, isn't it? I think eventually all of this kind of isn't going to matter, is it? It's going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
You know? But you're right. I think there are some emerging countries, definitely, and I think the UK is definitely up there. The UK and Australia, as you said, is definitely. I mean, and Japan, I think, is got, you know, seemingly getting more and more jiu-jitsu competitions. Tokyo holds loads at the moment.
Yeah. I think they'll probably, because I don't know if they've always had a good wrestling lineage, but certainly in the last few Olympic cycles, they've done really well. I think last time they won like 8. Don't know if it was golds or whether it was 8 medals, but like it was quite a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder whether you might start seeing more and more Japanese, like high-level Japanese people. There aren't that many at the moment in grappling, jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's probably a couple that are sort of Kenta and like a couple of others. But it'd be interesting to see, like, because they're obviously into it, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like fighting and martial arts has got a strong lineage from Japan,
and they've got all the you know the history, the rich history of all the other different kind of sumo and things like that. And it's, you know,
that would be, man. Imagine if like a really high level sumo fighter, like was like, I'm going to start grappling.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to start, making a run at like Nogi, go to ADCC. Yeah. How cool would that be?
Man, totally.
Just because their size.
Yeah, totally. I think, we said last time or the time before about like, it's good to have a good level in jiu-jitsu, but the elite level rather than jiu-jitsu, but the top guys are now becoming elite wrestlers and all these different things. And what if sumo starts to bleed in? Someone just like you say, like a sumo guy just trains like mad in wrestling and jiu-jitsu, but he's also a really good sumo player. And then that starts to be the new metric. Like, oh shit, maybe we need to go and get really good at sumo as well.
Well, all it would take is like a slightly different rule set where push-outs were included.
Yeah. So just a new... Go on.
Yeah, like a hybrid rule set.
Yeah.
You know, like your standard sort of, let's say like Polaris rule set where like, you know, you try and get a sub, it's going to be a referee's decision, all subs are legal. Referees are taking note of the things that are happening. So like you're not scoring points, but like, oh, he got a good takedown. Oh, he's past the guard. So they're kind of like points attributed to them, but they're all kind of evenly weighted. Like you're doing something that's progressing your position and you're, you know, doing that. But then also like having a push out element to that. That would be quite interesting, wouldn't it?
Definitely. And what would you have that as scoring points or winning the match?
Maybe just like scoring points.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know if it would make things more interesting. It would change the way that you'd have to fight though, because we did a bit of sumo, didn't we? And like being able to like pick people up and walk them out or like push them out, it changes the way that you engage. Yeah, like you don't want to like let someone get hold of you really, because especially if they're bigger or like strong, they can just pick you up and walk you out, and that's like hard to stop.
Could you use it as like an escape or a defense of some sort? Say you were in a tricky position and you were able to kind of say you were both on the floor and you could throw someone past a certain like the boundary, and then you'd have to restart or something. Do you know what I mean? That might make it a bit interesting. It might, I mean, you know,
it's interesting as well because a lot of the rules and the points are kind of derived from like fighting, aren't they? No, just in grappling. Generally.
Oh, right, okay.
They're kind of derived from fighting, aren't they? So, you know, if you can take someone down, like that's a good in a fight. And so that's weighted, that's got good scoring. If you can get round their legs and sort of pin them, again, good for a fight. It's weighted well with the scoring in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Submissions obviously end it if they tap out. But like in a fight, if you could just constantly keep pushing someone away, or like if you're on the floor and you can like sweep them quite far away from you, that's quite good in a fighting context, really, isn't it? Because it means you have like a period of time to get away. Yeah. Like if you could launch someone, like literally throw them like 5 feet away from you, you can now leg it. Yeah. So from a self-defense perspective, like if you can create distance enough that you can get a running head start to get away from that person. So like you could make the argument that like, if you like had like a perimeter and you could sweep someone and boom, launch them, or like imagine like I can't remember what it's called now, but where you're like falling backwards and
suplex.
No, like the judo move.
Tomonagi.
Tomonagi, okay. Imagine Tomonagiing someone, but like boom over the over the thing. You're like a big like Haragoshi, but instead you're just throwing them on the floor. You're like trying to launch them.
Mate, that'd be cool.
It'd be quite exciting as well.
Yeah, and you could have maybe
dangerous.
It'd be dangerous, but maybe you could have a bell that you then have to get up and go and ring yourself, and they've got to try and stop you. So then that's like I got away because I got to ring the bell. This now sounds
like a gladiator.
It doesn't it? I like it. Well, you know, we've spoken about this before. We're both into the new series of Gladiator. Yeah. It's just the events really, and the competitive elements. Mostly that. But I watch it because the kids are into it. You know, just trying to be a good dad. So, okay, you want to watch it? I'll just sit in the
comedy. Bradley and his son.
Bradley and his son.
Yeah.
No other reason.
I think there could be a good hybrid rule set there.
Yeah. It'd just make it entertaining, wouldn't it?
Yeah, push out. Because wrestling, I think there's a thing where you take people out of bounds and you get a point, isn't there? Like if you push them out. Yeah. So, obviously it would start to favour like stand-up people, but it just, I'd be interested to see how that like developed a grappling context match. Yeah, and what competitors it would attract, because that's the thing. Like the takedown competition for Grapplers Challenge that Colin set up. Yeah, it attracted a lot of wrestlers, didn't it? Mostly I think people who enjoy wrestling. Yeah, it was a shame that there weren't like more like judokas like in the gi going in. I thought there might have been. Yeah, but I think sometimes with these kind of hybrid rule things, to sort of speak probably a negative for them, is people get like very sort of focused on what that competition can do for their journey, and not necessarily from like a skill perspective, but from like a grading perspective or winning points towards your next belt, or like if I go and win this, then I'll get promoted next time I come in because I'm beating like the other blue belts or whatever. And with that sort of wrestling thing, it's like from like a skill perspective and like, you know, getting better at just grappling is good. But if you've got more like kind of external goals, like I want to get promoted, like that competition is not actually going to benefit you necessarily. Like do you know what I mean? Like people might see it like that. It probably would benefit you. It's not the healthiest sort of mindset, is it? It's not. No, it's not.
What about we've never I don't know much about it other than like certain proponents of it, but we have never talked about stuff like sambo. Do you know much about sambo? Or the difference?
I think there's two types of sambo. I think you've got like combat sambo, which is like a hybrid sort of MMA style, where they wear like a jacket, shorts, and they have gloves. I don't know the rules, but it's grappling, but with strikes essentially.
Okay.
But in like the jacket and the belt, so it's kind of. I think I don't know the rules of sambo. So you've got that one, and then you've got like the normal grappling style where there's no strikes and it's all grappling in the same outfit, the jacket and the
with
belt
the
shorts.
Okay.
I think a lot of it is focused. I think it's supposed to be like a hybrid of like judo,
and wrestling, maybe
like that kind of thing. I think I heard it might have been on that Dan Strauss podcast again. Someone talking about like the history of it and how they sort of like. I think they were trying to develop like a striking art, and maybe not Putin, whoever it was who was in power at the time, was sort of like judo and like wrestling, and they wanted to sort of combine the two. So, but I know they do like some leg locks, like knee bars, mostly knee bars. I think. I think they probably do heel hooks. I think they do toe holds as well.
Right.
But it's not as prominent. I think they're mostly like. But yeah, again, I'm probably wrong. I'm sure if you're a aficionado of sambo, let me know. But that I think they were sort of doing leg locks like in catch wrestling, like long before jiu-jitsu were doing, focused heavily on leg locks. And I think some of the stuff that we've kind of done now has been sort of originally derived from catch and sumo sort of approaches, and then developed and improved. So
it's interesting that, isn't it? Because Russia is both Europe and Asia, isn't it? So it's separated by the Ural Mountains, isn't it? That the one.
I don't know how it works. I think is Russia not its own continent?
I think it's. And again, I'm not a geography expert, but I think this is the case. It's half. This side of the Ural Mountains is Europe, and then the other side is Asia officially. So if that is the case, it's interesting that they've got a martial art that kind of blends the two.
Yeah. That makes sense,
Asian
really,
judo and like European sort of history of wrestling and
makes sense
Eastern
for
European
their culture, I suppose.
Yeah, man, it's quite cool. I didn't know this until the other day. I was looking up the wrestling I used to watch when I was a kid. Like, do you remember the Saturday afternoon, like Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks?
Yeah.
I thought it was a totally different thing. I thought that was actual. When I was a kid, obviously watching it, my memory of it, I thought they were actually wrestling, but it was pro wrestling, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right, I didn't know that until recently. I just thought it was primarily the WWF was a. I don't think they were part of WWF, were they? I thought WWF was just a primarily American thing.
What are you referring to?
So the British wrestling used to get on Saturday afternoons. It was British fighters.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
But it was pro wrestling. That's
what we'll do. There's a chap that I want to get on the podcast, and he is like a catch wrestling sort of aficionado.
Okay.
We're going to get him on, and we'll have a good chat about the history of catch in England, and get a real good rundown how that's like influenced like pro wrestling and we can talk about what I'd be interested to pick his brains on, because I know he's got a son who trains, is to pick his brains on like teaching catch wrestling to kids.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is like pretty mean stuff.
Rough stuff, and it's hard on the body.
It's like causing pain. And I'd be interested to find out like how he kind of approaches that. Because jiu-jitsu, you can, it is quite soft. Like I think you can teach it in different ways. Like you can make it nasty and hard and mean, but you can also teach it in a very soft way. Yeah,
it can be very fluid, can't it?
Well, what I mean is you can teach all the stuff that's like not that like horrible to other people. You can just omit all that stuff out and just teach like, right, we're going to do, imagine you're running a kids program and we say, right, in our kids program, from 8 to 12-year-old, we're not going to teach them any submissions because we think it's dangerous, and we don't want them getting hurt. So all we're going to teach them is like, takedowns and guard passing and holding people down. Like for me, that's quite a soft program. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's like
none of the nasty stuff.
Yeah, it's very kind. It's very nice. I don't think it's good, like because I think you can teach the kids how to do things safely, like it's to do an armbar safely, to do a rear naked choke safely, when they should tap and all these kind of things. And they need to learn that from a young age. So they get that like inbuilt.
Yeah.
And they also need to learn the danger, so that like if they do happen to be doing it with their brothers at home or a friend or in a self-defense situation, like they know when to stop.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not silly. Whereas I think if you just completely omit all that and make it too soft, like that's not good. But going back to the catch wrestling thing, like a lot of from what I've seen of catch wrestling can be quite fucking horrible. Like, so how do you teach kids that, or do you omit that stuff? I'd be interested to pick some of the brain. So I don't have the answers to that.
No, that's right.
Maybe they do teach it in a bit more of a soft way, don't they?
Yeah, maybe they just bleed a little bit of it in. But yeah, it'd be definitely good to get his insights, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
it'd be a good chat. That.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Right. What was the first one we had?
So the first one
was heart rate zone training.
Heart rate
this
zone
is
grappling,
like this is quite popular now, isn't it? Heart rate zone training from DEMA. High heart rate. So they tend to break it down into. So I think the basic concept is they break it down into high, medium, and low heart rate. As far as I'm aware, like this sort of started with his work. He's probably doing it at other clubs, but I think it really popularised when he went over to B Team and he was coaching those guys. And I believe they were wearing Whoop bands to monitor their heart rate. I don't know if they had like them on display whilst they were training, or whether they were just looking back on it, or whether they were checking in on it between rounds to see what heart rates they were at, and sort of deciding which zones would be high, medium, and low. I think that might be what they were doing, but I don't know if he was keeping an eye on it, like whilst they were training and being like, you need to pull your intensity now and you need to take it up. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. It's a good, ultimately what they're trying to do is govern intensity of training. So, you know, instead of using heart rate, you might go, right, today's going to be a light day. We're all going to have really light rounds, flow rolling, just like taking things like a bit easy and just focusing on technique, slowing it down a little bit. The difficulty becomes like, it's quite hard to do that.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to determine intensity and stick to it, especially for beginners.
Yeah. Definitely.
I've done a lot of heart rate monitoring. Obviously, I'm a PT, and we do a lot of heart rate monitoring in our cardio sessions and things like that. I've been using it for, almost since I started doing training clients. And everyone is different in terms of the way their heart rate responds to exercise. So I've seen people like, you know, ski erging, for example, and they're saying, oh, this is like easy. And they're having a conversation with me, which again is a really good sign that someone isn't working that hard.
Yeah.
But their heart rate is like redlining.
Oh, wow.
They're like 90% plus. And then someone else might be like working pretty hard, like they're sweating and they can't really talk to me that well, but they're like in like the green zone, you know, they're like in the 70% zone and they're really struggling to get it even into like the orange, the 80%.
What is that? What is it that makes that difference?
There's a couple of factors. One might be that the estimated max heart rate is wrong.
Right.
So generally what happens is they do 220 minus your age, which is a formula that some sports scientists came up on the plane to like a conference, and they were looking at some data from like a mass group of monitoring heart rates and things, and they kind of worked out that roughly 220 minus your age is going to serve most people pretty well when it comes to estimating your max heart rate. But if you've done enough heart rate training, you'll realise that is most of the time is wrong, and it might not be wrong by like a huge degree. It might just be like there's 5 beats out, so like percentage wise, like you're like 2 or 3% out, so it's not like huge. For some people though, it's gonna be way out. So really, like your max heart rate is determined by your genetics. It doesn't matter how fit you are. Like your max heart rate is your max heart rate at that point in your life,
right? And you can't change that.
You can't change that. No, that's just set there. But your ability to get to your max heart rate is you can change.
Yeah.
So you might say, look, I've done loads of max heart rate training and the most its max is 200. But like through some psychic ability, I know that your max heart rate is 210.
Yeah.
It's just that you're unfit. So whenever you're getting there, but you just can't push that last bit to get that extra 10 beats and really actually achieve your max heart rate. Then as you get fitter, you're like, my max heart rate's going up. It used to be 200, but now it's 205. Like, but actually, it's just that you're getting fitter. So you think it's increasing, but really you're just getting closer to what it actually is.
Yeah. Could you add willpower into that as well?
Yeah, there's a
like
big component.
mental strength, you know, like, because that's going to vary, isn't it?
100%. There are people that I train that I know could achieve their max heart rate, they're fit enough, but they just give up.
Yeah.
Or have trained in the past, they just give up.
Which is
like, oh, it's too hard.
It's like a personality thing, isn't it? On that level, isn't it?
It is. There's so many factors. Yeah. So personality, like your ability to withstand like pain,
and dig deep,
like what's driving you to actually do that.
Yeah.
Some people are going to be genetically better at working into those like high heart rate zones, and like that's their fitness that they've developed probably over time of just doing that all the time.
Yeah.
So they're quite good at being like anaerobic, like that's their like their genetic talent is they're very good at being anaerobic. Maybe they like I always like to use the runners like analogy. Maybe they'd be like your 400 meter, your 200 meter runners. That's their genetically what they'd be good at when it comes to running. And then you've got other people who are very good at being aerobic. They're very good at like just setting a slow pace, but they can just go forever.
Like a machine.
And so those people, they might not be good at achieving their max heart rate, but they're good at like just existing in those low heart rate zones. And maybe they find it hard to actually pump their heart rate up into those anaerobic zones because they're so good at being in this. They've conditioned that so well that they're so fit aerobically that they have to actually work quite hard to get out of that aerobic zone because they're very good at that. And they'd be your marathon runner sort of types.
Yeah.
And then everyone's going to be like on a spectrum in between there somewhere or another, genetically, but also like psychosocially, like what you're willing to do, like and how hard you're willing to work, what sort of level of pain you're willing to endure to like work in those different zones. So I think it's a good system. There's no perfect system when it comes to when it comes to anything in the world. Everyone's going to react differently to systems. But I think having some objective data is good. But I think what you'd have to do is you really you need to do it for a while to like work out like what your heart rate does, and then maybe you would set your zones from there. Yeah. Okay. But I like it. I've not played around with it that much myself in a jiu-jitsu context. Well, I have monitored my heart rate in jiu-jitsu, and I know a lot of other people do, and I've looked at heart rate data and stuff, and it's very anaerobic a lot of the time. Of course. Heart rate tends to just like will shoot up high. But I think last time I did it, I looked at my heart rate over like the space of like 4 or 5 rounds, and the average was actually quite low. But again, this is another factor that's going to come into it. Like I think if you had like say on Monday class where there's like, let's say half the class are like white belts, and then the other half are like a variety of coloured belts into black. There'll be quite a few black belts on the mat and brown belts and purple belts and things like that. But there's a lot of beginners as well. If you monitored everyone's heart rate, I reckon what you'd see is a lot of the white belts are like redlining a lot. Yeah. Because they're just so inefficient and they're working so hard to like just survive.
Yeah, they haven't got the economy of movement down, have they?
Yeah, they're just like, everything's just like, fuck, I'm just dying. And there's probably at like a higher percentage of the average heart rate in those populations. And then as you went up, even though people are getting fitter, this is kind of like contrary to what I just said, even though people are getting fitter, because of the efficiency of movement and their ability to like know when to work hard and know when not to work hard, you probably might find that the average heart rate sort of starts going down a little bit.
Oh yeah. And even within a move that would spike a white belt's or transition or a combination of moves that would spike a white belt's heart rate up, the movements you're doing, you've just got that economy of movement even within that, haven't you?
Yeah.
You know, rather than just knowing when to dial it up and dial it down naturally, you've found just a better way of doing it that just, you know. So I get the same when I teach music. You get a beginner guitar player and they're just fucking pressing really hard and everything. It's just like, you're not going to last a whole song like that. But you just get to you look at most like really, really good guitar players, their fingers are barely moving. You look at any good sort of jiu-jitsu player, they're moving in a way that you can just see that they've kind of stripped it back to what they have to do, movement-wise.
Good economy. Yeah. I think that actually sort of like promotes Dima's kind of system in a way though, because if you could maybe put everyone's heart rates up on like a screen in the class and everyone kind of knew where their heart rate was and they were really like keeping an eye on it, and they're like, oh, it's getting a bit like, it's a low heart rate zone let's say, and everyone starts sparring, and then they're like, oh, it's getting a bit high, let's just slow it down a little bit. Maybe I'll stop in someone's guard and just let it come down a little bit, and then we're just going to slow things down. I'm not going to strain so much, I'm not going to be pushing as hard as we're just going to relax a little bit more. It probably actually would be useful, wouldn't it?
Hugely. You know? I think it would be great data. And you could even, if everyone's wearing one, you could be like, oh, so-and-so, you kind of you're blowing out your arse a little bit. Let's just, even if it's one or two people.
Well, from a coaching perspective, you could go around and be like, guys, you need to slow down a bit.
Yeah, you're redlining.
Yeah, you're going too high. Or when it comes to like a hard session, again, like you're looking at those higher belts, like all the white belts are like redlining, fine, leave them. But you've got a couple of black belts going, and like you look at them and you think they're in the green zone. Like they need to come on. They need to work harder. Like,
step
this
it
is
up,
the point. Let's go. Like I know this might feel like a hard round, but you've got more in the tank. You need to push.
And it'd be fucking good comp prep wise as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But
I think the whole thing like is about physical adaptations, and this is one of the sort of limitations that people will cite when it comes to like, I don't need to do conditioning because I just spar. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but if you're not monitoring your heart rate during sparring, you don't know what physical adaptations you're creating.
Yeah.
So, skill adaptation, that is fine. Like, we're always trying to get better, and, if you're sparring, you're going to be getting better to a degree. But are you creating the physical adaptations that you need for you to get fitter?
Yeah, man. I mean, what better objective data as well than just something literally taking numbers all the way through that you can go home and be like, right. Yeah. When you're not thinking about escaping whatever position you're in or whatever whatever choke you're in or whatever, you can look back and go, right, cool, in that moment. And I mean, you could probably tie that even in with filming it and watch yourself going, okay, I'm doing that, I'm moving in that way, and I was redlining to that. I need to, I like, you can dial it down into those little,
that's interesting. You know like looking at the heart rate data and saying like, I was redlining but during that.
Let's have a look at that.
It didn't feel that hard. Maybe I'm just like inefficiently,
And if there's a time scale, you can be like, right, let's look at that minute on the camera. That's why I'm redlining, because I'm doing that wrong. That'd be a really efficient way of, like, as an individual but also as a team, kind of improving your skills.
It's an interesting one. I don't think there's a couple of things. I think really good for a pro team to like guide a camp preparing for a competition. I think it would be good for like hobbyists as well, because again, it's like it's something to buy into. It's like it's an extra thing from a school's perspective. It's like we do this heart rate training, and every session we're going to kind of like determine like how hard it should be. Using these like and it's all up on the screen. You can see it, and people like. From my experience of doing that, people like it. It's something. It's like a thing. Look, I need to get my heart rate up a little bit, and people they get quite into that sort of thing when it comes to exercise. It kind of almost takes their mind off the exercise.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very basic version of that at the gym. We have the little whiteboard with like the people's PBs. It's a similar kind of thing, because it's just people look at it. So Phil's got the fastest time on the aerodyne bike or whatever. It just creates a bit of healthy competition. As well as, like you said, just having really usable data. But it's probably good for like camaraderie and banter. Come on, fucking Dave, step it up.
Let's go.
Come on. Yeah.
Or like if you're like rolling with someone and they're like redlining and you're green line, you're like,
a couple of beers last night, mate. Was it? Fucking hell. Yeah, all that. Yeah, that's.
I'd be interested to see it sort of get rolled out a bit more, like frequently in other gyms and things like that. And see how it works out.
And we live in a time where the technology is available to do that. That's why we're so lucky. We live in a time where
it'd be really easy for a gym to implement that.
Absolutely, and fairly inexpensive. It would depend on what you use, but I think it's not going to cost the earth, is it?
No.
No. We're quite lucky in that respect. In a lot of aspects of our life, technology is kind of exploding, isn't it? So we might as well use it.
And with Whoop bands and stuff, you can't get everyone's heart rates up on one screen. But the good thing about Whoop bands is you can like put the little like thing in, like they sell like wearable clothing. So you're not, and they've got like the arm thing. They've got pants. I think they've even got a thong that you can like wear.
Brilliant.
And it's comfy. Yeah,
it's going to be good for the rollerbladers. Hey, come on, leopard skin, of course.
But it's. I think heart rate training is good.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's probably going to become more and more wide ranged. I don't think you need it, but I think it's not going to be a negative thing necessarily.
No. I think it stands the chance of becoming fairly popular, doesn't it? Normalised throughout sports, probably team sports. You think it's
already well established in other sports.
So we've covered the geography and its impact on the stars in grappling, really, previously with your third question, and up and coming regions in grappling. We've kind of covered all four of those questions. I tried to ask around for some random questions, but you weren't You don't think that none of them have kind of hit the strap, have they?
Not this week. They're a bit too random.
A bit too random. So we'll come back at you with that. To be fair, our favourite question asker, Foz, I gave him like 15, 20 minutes to come up with one. So
he went deep.
He went deep.
Too deep.
You think it was too deep?
He's not at work, surely. Maybe he's on a stakeout.
Maybe.
He's a policeman.
Yeah, maybe he is. Maybe he was apprehending a perp.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to you with one of those next time.
Yeah. But I think that's us
call
for
it
today. Yeah. Nice to see you. Episode 18 in the books. Like and subscribe. Put the notifications on YouTube.
Yep, whack that
One
bell.
day we'll get this on Spotify. I was thinking yesterday, listening to a podcast on Spotify. Should really get this on Spotify. Maybe I'll look that up now.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for long enough, haven't we?
Yeah.
And I'll eventually get a theme tune together as well.
Yeah, I did hear a preview of it. It's excellent. We just need to get it finished.
I know. Goddamn
Anyway,
ADHD.
Next time.
See you guys
soon.